Hey, I'm AJ,
I'm Zach.
and this is Fresh Tactics.
Hey guys, this is Zach and AJ, and today we are going to be talking about using bodybuilding methods or rep schemes, movements in your CrossFit training, since that seems to be kind of a hot point going on nowadays and something that we have a lot of familiarity with because we've done a lot of it in the past. AJ, what's kind of like been your experience as far as integrating some bodybuilding into your CrossFit?
Well, I had never bodybuilded.
Body,
I had never,
bodybuildered.
I've never bodybuildered. I had never done a bicep curl until I walked into a CrossFit gym. So I actually had zero experience with it until I came to train with you. So I started my athletic career with multi-joint full body movements and then came back around to refine as an athlete of greater training age with some more isolation movements to fix some weaknesses.
So pretty much, if nobody knows what that means, is you started CrossFitting when you were like in high school, right?
I was barely in college.
Barely in college, so you're pretty young. What's the age you start college in Canada?
It's the same as the age.
Is it called university though, right?
Yes.
When do you start university?
I started CrossFit when I was 18 and I had just finished my first year of university.
Oh, okay. I was graduating high school when I was 18. I was going to be 19. Anyways.
Well, I skipped a grade because I'm a genius.
So yeah, AJ was an athlete. She'd done ballet. She had very good body awareness. I'm just kind of laying the scene for you guys because she's actually one of the better movers. You know, like she's going her here at the gym. I know you guys are familiar with that and stuff like that, but she's actually a really fantastic athlete. Picks up things really well. For a larger female CrossFitter, because how tall are you?
5'9".
5'9", and like anywhere from 160 to 180 when you're competing and lifting a lot. She's actually got really good body awareness in gymnastics. And great Olympic lifting, and you would be shocked at the day that I had programming written in that she needed to do some like isolation stuff, and she had no concept of how to do a curl, and not like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like she knew how to curl and stuff like that, but I was coming up and I was kind of goading her muscles to make sure that she had an idea of actually how to isolate the bicep, and she really didn't have that concept down. Now you ask her to like, create shapes in gymnastics or find fixation and relaxation with like kettlebell lifting, she's got it. But it was really interesting that was just this massive disconnect with that. And that's kind of like a trend I see with a lot of people too. People that are getting into, CrossFit, a lot of people get in, they're like, oh, this is the first thing that I've really done athletically in my life. And really what that means is they really haven't worked out very much too. Like you get those people that come in, they've never been in a gym, like a big gym or any kind of gym, even like a curves or a Zumba, anything along those lines. And they start off by learning air squats and wall balls, and they start to learn how to clean and snatch, and they're trying to like figure out how to muscle up, and they really don't have this like real base, I'll say it like meathead identity, where like, like you know how to do these things. And that really like waters down like the idea of isolation style training or hypertrophy, i.e. like trying to build quality muscle mass. But it's an interesting turnaround because the gym industry that I came from, like with the personal trainer stuff, like functional fitness when it was coming around was like the new hotness. And having been a wrestler, I did a lot of things that were kind of similar to that. So it wasn't too odd for me to get into it, and I really enjoyed it, but I had that background. And then when you start seeing other people who don't have that background, it's like this complete oddity.
Because that meathead identity that you're talking about gives a body awareness in a different sense of, oh, I feel a pump in such and such muscle, and it does sound ridiculous to say, but that is an important part of
it's totally an important part of athletics. Like you need to have that kind of stuff. And when you guys hear me say meathead, I'm not like talking down on that. Like I do a ton of like private training with people or private online programming or whatnot for people that are like, going into the service or going into certain selections inside the service, people coming from the fire department or athletes that are outside of just the realm of CrossFit. I work with CrossFit athletes as well. But like we're talking about athletes, and a lot of the times a lot of them, it does call for an increase in size, and limb strength is a big thing too. And I understand, like, I get it, guys. I've owned an affiliate for, or not owned it, but I've been running affiliates for 10 years now. This is like my 10 year this month. It was pretty rad. But I've been training for a lot longer than that. And I've been wrestling for a lot longer than that too. And you just know it when somebody like grabs you, like, and you shake like, make it even like you shake someone's hand, like they got a firm grip. Yeah, they might have a big deadlift and stuff like that too. But you can add in additional training aspects without overloading the body with the large muscle group stuff to get stronger. Or some people don't have the strength yet to do some gymnastics movements where they're like, oh, do pull-ups or something to get stronger. And those people, the same people that say do pull-ups to get stronger instead of doing, like, we keep saying a curl. I'm just going to keep saying a curl. But like, do something like that to get your arms stronger, are the same ones who say, well, don't use bands. Well, now you have this person who they're not supposed to use bands. They're not supposed to do curls. And what are they supposed to do?
And if they do, 100 jumping pull-ups,
yeah,
they're going to get wrapped up.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea behind it is a lot of people are missing these things. And it's kind of like when I go out and teach the kettlebell courses and I talk about kettlebell pressing being so important and how it has a different plane on the shoulder because the thumb's back. And a big part of that is like, I'm like, hey guys, if you feel weak there or you're unstable there or anything like that, that's a weakness. And if you have a weakness, you need to address it. And when I say that, I'm always like, it's like leaving the hole in the Death Star. So like, it's a Star Wars reference, AJ. So like the hole in the Death Star was like big mad, they shouldn't have been able to take it out with like a one shot thing down the little porthole. So like if you like leave this little hole in this like big massive machine that is your body, you're just asking for it.
Well,
so and you can fix it by throwing in a couple like accessory lifts every now and then.
Well, the same way that we saw RIP regionals, all those dudes at regionals blowing their pecs because they're not doing any incline bench, and they're certainly not benching with independent weight. And all of a sudden, this demand is put on their body that they're not prepared for. That a little bit of isolation movement, I'm not going to say definitely would have, but may have.
I definitely think it would have helped.
Yeah.
Well, and for anybody that's not familiar with what we're talking about with that, we won't even get into the RP regional things because the regional competition is no longer around. But there was a very large global CrossFit event system that was going on a few years back. And at the regional level, one year it was the first day, right? It was the first day that it was happening to everybody. Mm-hmm. The first day had 2 workout combinations that was very pec intensive. And the second one had, if I get this wrong and anyone's like, burn the witch, I'm sorry, whatever, dude. It was 21:59 ring dips and something else. And I had an athlete, I was programming for an athlete that was there. But it was just like across the board in every region, people were blowing pecs. And like the first week it happened, people were like, kind of throwing shade on the people that were getting hurt and saying like maybe that like there was a substance thing and then they were coming off wrong and stuff like that. Then in every single week, like it kept happening more and more, and people were like
people weren't even showing up to
well, they were getting hurt. And I was in the back of the Northwest regions with Kaylor, who was my athlete, who was getting ready, and it was pretty somber. Like people were like, okay, here comes the workout. And then like I think it was like the third heat, we had somebody blow their pec in our region, and like we all watched it happen, and we were like, and then everyone's like, dude, like why are they trying to get us hurt and stuff like that? And I wouldn't say it was necessarily the program's fault, because like if you looked at it, it should have been like the athlete should have been able to handle it. I thought like the athlete should have been able to handle it. Was it a bit overkill? Yeah, I do think.
I think you could argue that all CrossFit is a bit.
Exactly, it is.
And we didn't see any females get hurt, likely because they were not cycling at the same rate, so they weren't putting their pec under that same level of fatigue or stress or whatever you want to say.
Well, and like one of the classic things happened though was like because the Northwest region was later in the years, like not year in the season, judging standards kept getting harder and harder. Like it was always a kind of a case with that. Like you saw like you'd watch it one week, and then by that week, like there was a little bit more damn.
Well, because it's the same judging staff, and they figure out, oh, this is how people are trying to screw this.
So they were also like, yeah, you got to get down like at a certain depth on the dip and come up, and like, hey, standards are standards and competition's competition. If that's what you have to do to hit the standard or the competition, that's it. Anyways, we're getting a little bit off topic on that. Kind of, but not. But the idea was like everybody was doing it, and I was sitting in back, and I wasn't like trying to jinx myself, but I felt very confident that Kaylor was not at risk for injury, and that's because him as a CrossFit athlete, when he came to me, he was a very well-rounded CrossFit athlete, a little wild in his programming and stuff like that. But But he would, when I started working with him, he really tapered down and listened to a lot of the things that I was telling him to do in his preparation. Like I didn't need to fix his motor. His motor was fine. Like Kaylor did all the work. The only thing I did was like trying to make him a little safer and did some performance work with him. And part of the getting him safer was I knew that he should be fine. We did a ton of decline bench press in the off season too. And then leading up to that, I was just like, the pec should be fine for the angle that they're asking for. Now he ended up getting a bunch of no reps anyways because they wanted him deeper, deeper, and deeper. And if I hadn't, I still would start to like freak out a little bit watching. I was like, man, I really don't want my dude to get hurt because he's a friend of mine too. But he came out fine. But like the idea behind taking something as simple as like the decline bench press and putting that into a workout is a lot of things people don't even think about. Like bench press is like Christmas in a lot of gyms. Like, and what I mean by that, they're like, we're benching today. This is awesome. And it comes around like once a quarter, you know, and like, hey, we bench pressed and then that's it. Or they're just like, we're doing a bunch of push-ups. When it's just like simplistic things like that can be added in to help it out. Now, not the bench press just in general, but like different positions on the bench press, working the pec in different ways, working your arms, hamstrings, you know, like Westside's, the conjugate method becoming bigger in CrossFit. You know, it's been like 3-4 years now, since 5, even maybe since conjugate's really gotten a bit bigger in CrossFit. People have gotten more in line. Yeah, they've got more in line with like what people would call accessory exercising and things along those lines. Now, with that thought process in mind, some people now don't even know what they're doing and they just add stuff in randomly. That's bad too, you know. Yeah, it is bad. I mean, you've seen people do that. I mean, AJ's been in a lot of gyms before she's in this gym that she now owns. And you visited a lot of gyms. So you've seen people add different things into programs before, right? Just haphazardly.
A cash out of 10 sets of 10 wall balls. Just cuz.
Yes. So yeah, there's the 10 by 10 cash out. But I'm also reading just kind of like lines of people being like, oh, I saw online that if I do razor curls, which if you're not familiar with the razor curl, it's kind of like it's a hamstring exercise or something like that. You're like on a GHD and you go out forward and you come back. Like people just see stuff and they're like, well, so-and-so looks strong. And they said I should do blank because my hamstrings are going to get bigger. And then they do it. And it's an isolation movement and that is the goal behind it, but they don't have a context behind why they're doing it. Now, a trend that I have been seeing in CrossFit in the last probably year is the buzzword of throwing bodybuilding into the training. Like, and that's like what people are doing now. There's like functional bodybuilding. There's like high intensity bodybuilding. I even like quote unquote, I'll call it like active bodybuilding. Like, and that is what I'll call my style of like putting training into it too. And that's fine, but I'm not out there just like marketing it like it's a new thing. I'm like, this is just another style. Just like when people come to our gym and they ask if we're a CrossFit, we are a CrossFit. But when we use our CrossFitting, like we use methods and energy system and training and things along those lines that I see from CrossFit in a complete program. So it's, I can't say that it's the true 3-on, 1-off, glory day kind of CrossFit. And you don't see that in too many gyms.
And
so,
it is very structured and such,
yeah.
We press either horizontally or vertically once a week.
Oh yeah, once a week. It used to be twice a week. Now we just like change it back and forth, and that's just because of the blocks of training that we're in right now. But like, there aren't many gyms out there that can say they do tried and true CrossFit method. So everyone's doing a hybrid of something like that. Everyone's doing something like that, and that's the way you got to make it work. You got
because otherwise you're not going to have you're not going to have people willing to go to that intensity.
Well, and that's the thing behind it. That's where the bodybuilding stuff comes in. Like, and that's where people are trying to just repurpose stuff. And I'm not saying it's bad whatsoever. Like I always tell any coach, like if you're stuck in a rut, go out and look and see what everybody else is doing. See the current trend of training, see what's going on, see what inspires you, see what you think works in your program. It's like Bruce Lee, where you take what's good, discard what's not, and keep what's own uniquely you're on. And it's that same kind of concept when you're doing your programming, because your programming is also set into your culture of your gym, your athletes, your equipment availability, your class structure, how many days a week people are coming in. And what a lot of people I know we're starting to see in CrossFit, because now we're getting in there where like I go to Power Monkey and I ran into like 5 other coaches that are like, yeah, I'm in my 10th year, my 11th year. It's not a weird thing anymore to hear that. But what you do when you have that, or even just at a great example, yesterday was Mother's Day, shout out to the moms. But we were sitting around and my girlfriend's mom asked how many people have been with us from the beginning, as in like a 4 gym person in our gym culture. And like, that means they'd be there for about 9 or 10 years. And like, we listed out so many people. Now, the thing behind that is, and why this kind of comes back around to the bodybuilding thing, is that people are getting burned out. People like, the idea behind CrossFit is the intensity, and the coach is the one to bring the intensity and to bring.
They're not coming in ready to set their hair on fire.
Exactly. And you just,
every day for the last 10 years.
And you just can't. You can't. I couldn't either. It was easier even almost for us, because when we did have the competition season, which wasn't a make or break, but I liked doing it. I knew there was an ebb and flow to it when I was going to be running real high, and I knew there was going to be time when I was doing kind of a building thing. Now, the average person that's coming in, they're like, well, I'm not in a 4-month deload block kind of thing. They're like, it's summer, I just want to be in shape. Or it's like a lot of people you see in our gym, they just love to come in and train, and they love the method of training we do, and they come in to do it. Now, if you're coming in constantly to light your hair on fire and get after it, you're going to start seeing that intensity bleed come down. You even saw it with like Chris Spieler. He started doing that grunt work program, and all it was working with odd objects. And the idea behind that pretty much is, he's like, I was burned out on the barbell and knowing my capacity. It's like me when I get on the rower. I know what I should be doing on the rower when I'm on the rower. When I'm on, in like a skier, and I even now have a better idea, but like our janky Airdyne bikes, those are the best, because like sometimes they run hot and sometimes they don't. So you don't really know if you're like,
and bike to bike.
Yeah, you don't really know if you're being 10 ply or not. Like, are you like really wussing out here, and are you like really getting after it, or are you just kind of like whatever? But like on the rower, it's the feedback, exactly what it is. So like I avoid the rower like the plague, and I'll get on it from time to time. And there's like certain workouts, like nobody wants to retest their Fran. It's like, I've done it 100 times. So the idea with reintroducing something else along the lines of like the bodybuilding, the functional bodybuilding, the high intensity bodybuilding, is it's intensity style training like you're used to seeing in your classic CrossFit, but you're getting the isolation movements, i.e. what some people would call it the pump, the burn too, where like you're really fatiguing certain muscle groups, and it does feel very high intensity, but there is a limiting factor because of muscle fatigue. Like you're going to give out at a certain point. Like you see it with our crew all the time, because we do a lot of training like this, and we've been doing it for years. I'm not saying I was like some stupid hipster, like, yeah, I was doing bodybuilding with CrossFit before it was cool. I wasn't. It was just a training method that I was familiar with, and we used it. And I saw it with a lot of my people that maybe wouldn't have been doing CrossFit for 10 years now if they hadn't had that ability to go to it. And you see those workout days, they're dying. It's hard, but they're not on the floor breathing dead. And that's important too, to keep your athletes stimulated. Like you want to keep them coming in. You want to keep them seeing gains through different exposures to different training styles and things along those lines.
Well, and even better if your training week is set up such that, and I know that Kenny Kane down at CrossFit LA very much does this. He's a little bit more explicit about it, but we do it as well. There are certain days where it's a more traditional CrossFit WOD on the board that we would label conditioning, that everyone knows, okay, it's time to go ham. Yeah. And then they do it together.
We have that like Wednesday and Friday. We don't have any of the other AB like complementary things.
And we saw it on, you were traveling, but I saw it on Friday. We had a 2-part workout, and the second part was 3 rounds, 25 American swings.
And 25 wall balls.
25 wall balls. And people sold out. And it was awesome to see, but they can't do that every day.
No, they can't.
And we saw new people, and this is a trick of Zach's, is that, having been a coach for so long, it's easy to see, okay, this guy's brand new. We're gonna load drop in a way that is actually more similar to the way you were doing personal training and bodybuilding with your people. They're still getting the same stimulus, but I'm not gonna make Buddy over here do 3 rounds of 25 wall balls. I'm not going to tell him going out that he gets a special snowflake workout, because that's going to make him uncomfortable too. But I'm going to go up and talk to him mid-workout and be like, hey, next time you go to the ball, just do 20 reps. And then the last round, all right, just do 15 reps, finish it out. And then he can finish around the same time as everyone else and not feel like he's got to go outside and
Well, and that's key to it as a coach too, having levels to knowing how to work with people to get them there. One, like, there's tricks to get people like super fatigued, and working hard, like encouraging negative splits and things along those lines and stuff like that. But the big idea behind it is really like being okay with this this shift even in CrossFit right now. Like, to me, it's nothing new. It's kind of funny that people are like, this is the next phase of CrossFit. I'm like, I'm like, this is something that should have been part of your tool bag the entire time. And, you know, guys, like, we're on here, we're referencing like bodybuilding and like we're keeping things really simple. And when I say that, like, even when I teach courses, like, I start by saying, like, everything we do is like KISS, if you're not familiar with that, is keep it simple, stupid. And the reason behind that is, like, there are plenty of like books and podcasts and things and stuff like that you can go out and read and listen to, and you're just going to want to like gouge your eyes out as you go through them. We just had one of our interns take off who finished his master's with us in our intern program. And like, we could get deep in talking about, you know, neuromuscular connectivity and things along those lines. But for a lot of you coaches out there, I know this, and this isn't a bad thing. A lot of you are getting into this maybe as a side job, or you're new to this and you're still learning that base knowledge. So I want you to kind of have like an easier way to kind of identify with this stuff. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't like deepen your well and really get into it, but we're trying to give you like the basic, straight to the point kind of thing here with, as far as like when we're referencing bodybuilding, we're talking about isolation style movements, and they're not bad. And you really should like get into like looking into more of them. And for a lot of it, it's really good for like tendon strength and like just joint health and a lot of those things. If you have, and like we do so much like pushing and pulling in certain planes in CrossFit, and it's the way like the common movements kind of fall in line. And this is an easy way to fix it. Instead of doing some big complicated, like even like, let's say a snatch pull, right? Like a snatch pull, people are like, okay, I'm gonna have my athlete work their upper back with their snatch pull. Hey, Zach, that's what I've been doing, right? And I'm like, well, your athlete's shoulders are all internally rotated. They don't even have the strength to hold it back, so they don't want to use a lighter weight because they want to get stronger because they're thinking about their snatch pull and they're thinking about how much weight they're going to eventually snatch. So it screws the whole thing up. Just do some face pulls, do some bent over flies, do some stuff, you know, do some 3 points. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that you can work to, one, get the scap moving correctly, two, to really have a positive return in this. So this isn't solely just like back to the point of like AJ, you know, the CrossFit athlete who had no idea to activate her bicep and how much healthier and stronger she got as soon as we got her some connectivity with how to actually activate like certain muscle groups. But it's along the lines of like, you can fill in the weaknesses in those big lifts that you're looking for by fixing that stuff. And like you go to gymnastics coaches or Olympic lifting coaches and things along those lines, and you go to people that are specializing, and you will get set up with certain movements that you're like, oh, my coach has me do blank because they said this is going to fix my kipping pull-up. And all of a sudden you're like, well, the answer is always going to be like, you know, hollow like flies or something like that. Or you guys can't see what I'm doing with my arms. Oh, we're kind of videoing this, so you might be able to see what I'm doing. But anyways, just flapping away. But there's certain movements that you can do. And people are like, well, then that's the movement that was prescribed by this one coach for this one thing. It gets propagated over like the internet or social media, and like, here's how you fix your muscle up. Well, no, it was like a thing to help someone like isolate their lats, so maybe they'd get a better kip. So you really got to like get in deep on this stuff, and don't be afraid to go just as deep on like the understanding of like push-pull days or like chest and back days, and how you can take aspects and parts of that into your CrossFit programming so you have a bigger return for your athletes instead of just focusing on, you know, mechanics of the wall ball. Not that that's not important. But like you mentioned, the classic CrossFit class twice a week, we have that. I walked up to you one day, I was like, man, Austin Mayala would be so proud of me. I CrossFitted that class so hard. And I've been doing this for years, and I go out and I teach seminars to people all over the world. And I was laughing about that, how basic that class was that I taught, and how like focus on the fundamentals of words. And that's big too. And you'll see that too with some athletes. Their eyes will start rolling in the back of the head. So sometimes it's easier to give them things that they can pick up quicker, and will get the task accomplished as well as you're doing it. And that makes you a better coach too, if you're talking about the 10-year athlete, not the 6-month athlete, the 3-month athlete, the 2-week athlete, or the I'm trying to get in shape for my wedding athlete. Like we're talking about, you want to see a sustainability and building a culture in your gym that has a return in the work that you're doing while keeping people stimulated and healthy through this kind of training.
Well, and that's a good point too. Just because you geeked out about bodybuilding doesn't mean you need to geek out with your athletes about bodybuilding. If you just want to say, hey man, this is going to make you jacked. Yeah. That's all you need.
And honestly, I get people all the time that are excited about that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know. And again, it goes back to the meathead thing, guys. Which is funny. Like we've even been called like, yeah, we even called a meathead gym before. We even called a kettlebell gym before. Like, and it's like said with disdain. I'm like, put some respect on that when you say it. No, it's not a big deal. It's understanding different methods of training. When I sent you to the Poliquin course, who's now passed, but they talked about all kinds of stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's so now you're talking about limb strength. Where is that important? Combat athletes, LEO, military, firefighters. It's not just athletes. Anyone with an active job is gonna need to address that in their training as well.
Well, I remember there was one time we pushed a big, I think it was a longer block of training that we were pushing in the gym. We were doing a lot of specific stuff like this, and we don't get up at the board and like just straight soapbox to our athletes, but we do like them to understand what we're doing. Like we do always hear that they like the fact that we explain what's going on, even if we can keep it pretty precise. And it was one time we were doing a lot of limb strength work, and we're like, hey, a big part of CrossFit is quarter extremity, right? So people talk about quarter extremity movements and things like that. And I was like, well, at a certain point, that quarter extremity is going to like start reaching its apex, and those extremities have got to get strengthened too to meet that demand as well.
Because as you pointed out, we do trunk work or core work every day in our warm-up, at least twice a week in our workouts. Those 9-10 year people are getting pretty strong. So that becomes the difference maker is, okay, well now when that power is moving out to your extremities.
Exactly. Well, and so one of our guys, Rod, I mentioned that, and he was like, oh yeah, it's like, because he was a swimming coach. He's like, yeah, we call it like working out. We're working out when we do it. And I was like, I thought that like just completely nailed it. Because if you're talking, we're field sport athletes too. Like if you have guys and they're competing for the same job, like let's say like football or something like that, and they both have a double body weight squat. They both hit combine score on the bench for like 20 reps. They both have the same 40. They both have the same vertical. They both have the same skill set even about. Because some people are like, well, then it goes to skill. I'm like, I understand that. At a certain point, there's got to be something that's going to tip the favor towards one of the other athletes. And one of the things that can be is limb strength. And a lot of the grapplers I work with too, like you can feel it when someone grabs you that like gets a hold of you, like, and you're like, that's a strong person. Now, if you also have that strength to ragdoll them past that too, that's a big thing. And that seems like a duh moment. Like,
especially in a combat sport, if that initial contact, you feel, you kind of want to strike fear in the heart of your opponent.
Yeah, exactly.
When you grab someone.
I'm glad to hear that you're picking up on that coming back down here from Canada. But yeah, she nailed it. And
He's such a pacifist.
And I always hate being that real world application person. How often are we just horsing things with our arms and stuff like that? How often are you in a weird position or in like your car and you're like trying to like reach through like the other side and like pull something towards you, and people with like weak arms is just not working towards it. It doesn't need to be your full focus, all right? Or maybe that you have a deficiency where like you just get too much delt activation and somebody like in like your push-ups or like your pecs are overtaking things and you're not getting your triceps worked enough, and the coach, no matter what, try and tweak this person to get the response that you want, you can't get them to do it. It doesn't, okay, you're not, and if you're sitting there, that person's like, that person's a bad coach. You haven't worked with enough people. I've taught thousands of people in seminars. Thousands.
And sometimes you need to regress to progress.
Oh, I'm saying not even like, that's not even the people I've worked with in my gyms, all right? In my gyms or in a private thing. So I've had thousands of interactions with people. I'm not a bad coach because someone's just a bad learner sometimes, all right? You're going to run into some people that have an issue having connection with like you. You're the example. Well, you are. You're the example. You were like the strong Olympic lifter, gymnastics, all that stuff, couldn't activate her bicep. Yeah. And no matter what I was doing, it wasn't happening. Well, it just took some time.
And the words that Zach used that got me to do it was, I know you can snatch 175, but this is going to help you snatch 185.
Yeah.
That's when the light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, I can embrace my meathead side.
Exactly. Well, and it's just kind of the idea behind it, guys. So like if you're having issues getting some people to hit specific muscle groups that are weaknesses in them, and they're like always shoulders slumped forward and all that stuff, you're like, what is happening? Like take a little time to focus on some specific muscle group training, i.e. bodybuilding style stuff. It's also fun It builds up a lot of that connective strength. A stronger limbs attached to a strong body is going to be a strong person. That's just basic life. And like I said, like no matter what, like I know we don't want to think about that thing like, oh, we're running through the rainforest and we're going to overhead squat logs. Like, no, I'm not talking about the real world application. I'm talking about the real world application of grabbing and pulling things close to you, groceries, all that kind of stuff. And just stronger limbs will help out with that. All right. I keep referencing out stronger limbs because it's kind of the low hanging fruit for a lot of people, but a big part of what we do really gets into the nitty gritty of upper back strength and hamstring focus and things along those lines. And we just don't have enough time to talk about that today. And we really don't have to get into the in-depth nature on that.
We'll talk about hamstrings another day.
Yeah. It's a cold, low-intensity, quad dominant world out there. And we are the ones that are going to fix that. But for today, you really just got to understand how to fix some of the connectivity of people. A lot of my rehab athletes come to me just because they're functionally dysfunctional. And when they come to me, I don't get them going with kettlebells right away. I get them going on this isolation style movement stuff, and then we work into it. So I kind of reverse engineer it from the other way people do it. So with that said, guys, there's a big market going out there nowadays with people adding in bodybuilding training and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that you have to solely make a bodybuilding class or only have a bodybuilding workout in your program and only do it like once a quarter or just do it for a certain block of training. Get used to putting these kind of movements into your programs. It's going to help your people out dramatically. You'll see a huge return, and it'll be fun. It'll be engaging. You as a coach will grow because you're going to learn how to coach some new movements. You'll in turn like have better connection with the athletes because they'll have a better understanding of where you're trying to cue them maybe to hold their body more so in their clean. So if you're looking for like, you know, the magic fix for programming, there isn't one out there. All right, guys. But constantly evolving your thought process too is kind of goes back to that like constantly varied functional movement that CrossFit did. Just because there's 9 movements that are taught in the course as an exposure level thing that you should be getting people moving does not mean that it ends there. All right, there's a big world of movement out there, and we didn't even scratch kettlebells or any kind of weird calisthenics. We were simply talking about isolation movements, and you should not throw out the baby with the bathwater when we start talking about functional training, guys. Functional movement. Isolation definitely has a place in CrossFit, and I'm glad to see a resurgence of it. And I think we all just need to spend a little bit more time educating ourselves on it. AJ, you got anything else on that?
Nope. Just getting educated.
Right on, guys. Well, that's all we got for today. Remember, when all else fails, fresh tactics.